Hey everyone, welcome to my channel and my first video ever. Today I'm going to show you how to create a simple scare in Unreal Engine 5. We'll be using the sequencer to create a simple animation, and then use montage sections to control what part of the animations to play. Let's have a look. I have a simple scene here from my survival game that I'm working on. If I resume playing, and as you can see, as I get closer, we'll have this character that pops up and waves at the player. Then I get closer, they go back into hiding. If I move back, they're back waving. And then if I just run through, they disappear. Yep, let's dive in. We'll start by creating a new project using the third person template. I'm not using the starter content because I don't need it. Using blueprints, just give your project a name. I'll just call it Simple Scare. Since I already have a project with that name, I'll just call it 2 and click create. Before we start, let's just do a simple prep. I'll just remove these items, kind of create a simple scene so that we can create some basic animations. I'll just duplicate this real quickly, turn it around just to kind of make some sort of hallway. I'll duplicate it again, and we have this simple hallway. Alright, so starting off with, we'll head off at the characters, open the mannequins folder, rigs, and then we will take out this CR mannequin body. We'll just drag it into the world, wait for it to load. Now, as you guys can see, we have the sequencer. So this is essentially where we can create our own animations. Again, this is not an animations tutorial, but I'll just show you how to use montage sections to kind of create your own unique scares, right? So yeah, let's quickly create a basic animation where the character kind of peaks, waves, and then hides as you get closer to it. So starting off with the sequencer, just a quick summary of what it is. So if we click over here, you can see create a key when channels / properties change. So if we tick that, whenever we change a bone's position, we'll automatically key it. However, there needs to be a key first. So basically we can just create this, so we add a key to everything, and then from now on it'll automatically key anything that we move. So let's just kind of start creating a base pose. So we can select the body control. So if you look to your right side, you'll see animation outline. This kind of shows you all the controls that you have. Then you can switch between moving, rotating with E, and then scaling with R. We don't really use scaling because you don't want to change the proportions, as you can see. So we'll just leave that be. We'll just work mostly with rotating and moving. And over here, I like to turn off snapping just so it doesn't snap, so it's more smoother. So if you have snapping, it'll kind of snap, and I don't like that. So we'll just turn that off. So first thing first, let's create a base pose. Another thing, let's turn on the IK controls for our hands. So if you go to global control, and then you can see here IK switch. So we'll turn both IK switches for our hands because it's more realistic. As you can see now, we don't have to worry about moving the shoulders, the elbows. It is all done using the IK. So we'll just reset everything. Alright, and we can get started. So quickly, just create your own pose, use your own creativity to kind of create some sort of idle pose for the, and then yeah, I'm just switching between global and local transformation over here. Oh, let's do that again, and then kind of rotate the hands as if I guess the enemy has their hands on the wall, right? They're trying to balance themselves. And this is not really an animations tutorial, but just how to use animation montages and sections to create your own unique scares. Alright, so just work our way through here. We kind of create this pose over here. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going through this super quickly. Can kind of move the legs, and as you can see, the legs are automatically in IK mode, so I don't have to worry about turning that on. Yeah, so that's the first step. Again, over here, we can actually show time as seconds. I'd like to see the time in seconds rather than frames. So this will be our idle pose. So on the idle pose, I'll just make him stay as he is without moving. So if I move to half a second, I go all the way up. I'll just key again. So again, this is our basically our idle pose. Then we'll say in half a second, they'll transition to waving. So if we take the body control, kind of turn it, and I'll actually go back to global, move him. You can see now that he's speaking a little bit. We'll move the leg as well, just so it's not, the knee is not popping. You can kind of move the hand out here, move it up, as if they're waving at the player. So we'll kind of just set a base pose. Yeah, so let's just look at it from here, see how it's looking. So I think we can move the hips outward more, and then yeah, these I guess circles over here are the elbow targets, so we can just move them here so the elbows are not in a weird position, right? So yeah, let's just key everything again. So we go back up here, we key all the bones, and then let's see what we have. So you can see here the enemies in idle, and from here they kind of transition to this peaking mode. And then let's create a wave. So let's go half a second, so a quarter of a second. We'll just kind of create a simple waving animation. So let's just move the hand or rotate it. So I'm controlling the IK hand left. And then, so you can see, we'll just do that again. Kind of simple waving animation. And then if we actually select the key, we can do Control C. We'll just paste it here, Control V, so that it's looping perfectly right. So you can see it's a simple waving animation. Of course, we can copy this key over here, put it again here. Again, it's not the best animation, but we can get creative with it. I'm not the best animator myself, but this will do for now. So again, it's just a simple hand wave, right? And another point, it's important that this ends and starts at the exact same location because we need it to loop properly. If it's not looping properly, it'll not look right. And you'll see what I mean later. So now let's create the animation from high or from peaking to hiding. So that's actually super simple. We can just copy this key, which is the hiding pose, and we can just say copy it over here. So now you can see that they're just back into hiding. And let's just, this basically controls how long our animation is. So we'll just drag it up till here so that it's 2.5 seconds long in total. And then if we just play it, it's really simple. They peak, they go back. I play it again, they peak, and then they go back. So now, this is where the montage sections come in hand. So we need to export this or bake these animations in a certain way. Starting off, let's just export the idle animation. So it's this section. So again, let's drag this back to half a second. This is basically our idle pose. So we can right click over here, go to bake animation sequence. I'll just place it in the content folder, and then let's just name this peak idle or whatever you want to name it, and then we'll click OK, export the animation. Next, we will export the hiding to peak. So this portion over here, it's another half a second animation. Same thing, bake, animation, put in the content, and let's just call this to peak, and then okay, leave everything as it is, and then export. Next, we will export the animation or the waving animation. So as you can see here, the enemy is just waving, same thing, right click, make animation sequence, put in the content folder. Let's just name it waving. Click OK, export, and finally we will export the final montage section that we need, which is from waving to hiding. And we'll call this in content OK, export. Oh, I didn't name that. I forgot to name that. Let's just do that again so we have everything named properly. Contents, we'll name this to hiding and click OK and export. And let's just save the sequencer so we don't lose our progress, because we can always get back to this animation. So I'll show you if I close this. If you click Control Space to open your content browser, if we go to content, you can see we have a level sequence and all the other animations that we exported. But if you click on your level sequence, you will come back to the sequencer, and then you can change the animations that you want. So just make sure you save it, close it, and this one, I don't need this, I can just delete it. So yeah, now we have these 4 animations. How can we use those to create montage sections? So let's just go to the peak item, like right click on it, and we'll say create an montage. So let's just call this montage peak scare. We'll open this montage. So dock it over here. As you can see, it's just a boring idle animation. There's nothing to it. But if we go to our asset browser here, and again, if you don't have that, you can go to Window and then Asset Browser over here. And while you're at it, make sure that you have your montage sections, which is this one. Just click on it if it's not already enabled. Then let's search for our first one to peak. So this is our first one we'll want to search for. So if I write to peak here, if I write to peak, I drag it over the red or the green bar. You can see we're slowly building up the animation we created, nothing too crazy. And then we will want the waving. So if I search for waving, drag it over here. Again, we're just slowly building the animation we created. And then we will search for hiding. Why I misspelled that. Drag it over here. And yeah, so nothing too crazy. This is just basically what we created. Now if we go to montage sections, just make sure everything is cleared. We can create sections to kind of dissect this animation into sections, and we control which parts of the animation to play at what times. So if we right click, we do new montage section, we'll name the first one to peak. So this is where the enemy is transitioning from their idle pose to their peaking pose, and you can drag it and position it right over here. We'll create another section, we'll call this one peaking. So, or waving, or whatever we want to name it. Should have named it waving, but let's just keep it peaking for now. So this is where they're actually peaking and waving at the player. The final montage, we'll just, for the final montage section, we'll call it hide. And we'll drag it over here. It lets me do that. And then, yep. So now we go to our montage sections and we see that we have this link or this chain that's being created. So let's just clear it. So what we'll essentially be doing is we're saying if it's at the if it's playing to peak, let's just play to peak and then proceed to peaking. So as you can see now, it's not just looping, but it's actually going to the next section. And at peaking, we'll say if you're at peaking, then just replay peaking. And now you can see what happened here. So now it's not going back to peak, it is just playing the peaking section. So it played it to peak, entered into peaking, and now it's just playing that on repeat. And now we want the same logic here. So if you're hiding, just go to the default section, in this case it's called, and then just stay there. So if we go default, and now you can see that it's only here, but if I put it in here, you can see that it just goes into the default section. And you can just do the same thing here. So if I pause it for a second, let it go here, now you can see it's just looping the default um, section. So yeah, so let's save that. Have our montage sections ready. We have our animations all good to go. So let me just move out here. Let's start creating our blueprint. So I'll create a folder called blueprints. Click on it, create a new blueprint class. It's an actor. Just call it BP peak scale or whatever you want to name it. Open it. So first thing you want to add is a skeletal mesh, right? So if you go to here, skeletal mesh assets, drop down, select your any character. In this case, I'll just select the SK Manu Simple. And here, you can see the animation mode. We can just say use animation asset. The asset we'll be using is the one that we created, which is this. So if I click on it, now it's active. I can just click this arrow, and then it'll select it. Also, we want to turn off looping and playing. And another thing I forgot to mention, if we go back to the montage, let's just deselect this enable auto blend out. This is important, otherwise the animation won't work properly. We go back to peaking or to the blueprint. Let's just add two box collisions. So the first one, we'll call it trigger. This is actually what's going to trigger the scale. So let's just not make it attached to the skeletal mesh. We can move this out here. We can scale it, make it however big you want. Let's just move it out here. And then we can duplicate it with Shift D, and then we'll just call this end. So this is actually what's going to end the scare. So as the player gets closer, they run into this, and then the enemy just disappears. So let's just quickly compile. Alright, so first things first, on event begin play, let's make sure that the skeletal mesh is not visible, so the player cannot see it. And yep, so that's on event begin play. And we can delete the begin overlap and the tick because we don't need them. We'll also be creating one variable called triggered. This will essentially keep track of whether the scare has been triggered or not. Then we'll go to triggered or box collision triggered, and on component begin overlap. So from other actor, drag out, do equal equal. Then from the pin over here, we'll say get player character. So this is essentially checking that the player that is colliding with this box is the actual player. It's not some AI if you have enemy AIs in your game or any other object. Once we've confirmed that it is the player, so we'll say sequence, search for the sequence node. So for those of you that don't know, the sequence node essentially does things in sequence, as the name indicates. So on 0, we'll actually do once. So what we want to do is ensure that our skeletal mesh is visible. So we'll just basically tick this to visibility. We'll just clean up our blueprints and set triggered to true, because now our scare is triggered. And next, we want to play our animation montage from our specific montage section. So play montage. So if you search for montage, we'll see it's this node. So connect it from then 1 to the execution pin. The montage we're playing is basically the one we created. We select it and we're playing it from to peak. So if we quickly go to our montage, we want to start playing it from to peak. That's where we want to start playing this montage, from this section. So that's why we're putting to peak over here. That's about it for having an overlap. So on end overlap, or actually on trigger end overlap, so when the player leaves this box, we want the enemy to hide. So same thing first, just confirm that it's the player that's actually leaving this box. So again, using Control D to duplicate, you can just select whatever nodes you want, and then you can press Control D to duplicate them, and then drag from the execution pin, other actor to the equal, and from here, same thing, playing the same montage, but we are playing it from a different section, particular from hide. So if you go back, I want to play from here, and then as you can see, it'll just go to the peak idle and stay there. Finally, so yeah, and if the player goes back into this trigger, it won't do this anymore because it's already done it and we're not resetting it, so it'll just play to peak, so the enemy will just peak again. And finally on end, so when they overlap with end, again we just make sure that it is the player, and here actually we want to make another check so that we're not destroying this actor unless this has been triggered, which is why we have this triggered boolean value. So if you drag triggered and hold control, it'll get the value. If you drag triggered and hold alt, it'll set it for you. So that's a quick tip to speed your workflow. So just drag from here and called and boolean, drag the triggered into the other pin, and drag the output pin to the branch, and from true we'll just say destroy actor, and we'll compile, make sure you save everything, and let's see it in action. So if we go back here, let's just move our sequencer actor from here. Open up your content browser, go to blueprints, take out the peak scare. Let's just position him approximately where we want him to be. Looks right. And let's find our player start. If I start playing, as you can see, so if I quickly detach using Alt S, you see that he's not there. If I reattach, now as I go, see that he peaks. If I move closer, he hides again. If I go back, he's peaking. And then once we hit that end trigger, or that end collision box, he'll disappear. So yeah, that's it. I use montage sections to create simple scares or horror events. So just before I end the video, I want to show you another example from my survival horror game that I'm working on. How to use montage sections to create these kind of scares or horror events. So if I turn on my flashlight, and when I eventually hit the trigger, box collision, you can hear a few sounds that play. The character calms down, another sound, and it's a bit different, this one, but it follows essentially the same idea using sections, and then as I get closer, they just escape. So let's see how the montage looks like. So again, you have your default section, your swing, which loops, and then hide. This is what is played when they trigger the end collision. So if you go into default, you have few notifies that play just some footsteps, and then other notifies that I use in the blueprint, and then they continue swinging. And eventually they just hide, and that's where I destroy the actor. So this is it for this video. I hope you found this useful. Do like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought in the comments, or if you want to see other specific tutorials. And thank you again for watching.